Hi and welcome to this video about how to accept old age gracefully. And growing old, at least in the number of years we've been on this planet, is something that happens to everyone. But that doesn't mean we're prepared for the experience. After all, in our formative years it seems as though everyone who's too old to be at school is basically ancient. And even as we begin to grow old, in our mind's eye we're still youthful, even if we aren't as fast as we were and need props such as glasses and maybe even a walking stick or other mobility aid to help us live our lives. But unless you're a rock star, then the time comes that you need to actually accept old age, preferably at least kind of gracefully. So start by taking pride in your appearance. Movie stars do this all the time. It might sound sexist, but men seem to be able to get away with growing older better than women, although there are exceptions like the actress Judi Dench, who seems to get away with it quite well. Whilst most of us aren't movie stars, it doesn't mean we can't learn a thing or two from them. For some, that could mean things like Botox to iron out the wrinkles, or colouring your hair to hide the increasing whiteness that's taking over. Always assuming your hair's still on your head in reasonable quantities, because it's actually quite useful that shaved heads seem to be making a comeback, so even if you're suffering from male pattern baldness, that isn't necessarily a reason to be upset. But your appearance can be critical. It's unlikely that us oldies will be able to wear the same fashions as teenagers, even though retro can be a fashion statement. So it's probably worth forgetting the expensive, highly coloured shoes, but maybe include some loud socks. They can make a statement on your behalf and are reasonably acceptable at all ages. And if you've got hair, look after it, because for most people the mad professor look really doesn't help. Yet it seems like hair often has a tendency to get wilder as we age, and it grows from places we don't necessarily want it to grow from as well. Your wardrobe's an important factor as well in your appearance. Just because you're getting older doesn't mean you have to settle for the designs that your grandparents wore when they were sitting on the porch, gently rocking themselves to sleep. Equally, it probably shouldn't mean that you wear the same style clothes you wore as a teenager. I'm assuming most of those are either discarded or seem to have shrunk since you last wore them. And there's a reason that flares are no longer seen. But understated often works better than anything else. You can choose things like glasses and shoes to complement your style and maybe even highlight the features that you've gradually acquired over time. And accept that things change. Otherwise, our phones would still be hardwired to the wall, there'd still be an awful lot less television channels with nothing to watch than there are currently available. And one of the tricks of growing old gracefully is to accept those changes. They're inevitable, and you can't turn back the clock and relive your life, no matter how much you'd like to. So accept what's happening. Don't mutter under your breath too often about how things were better when you were a youngster or how things have changed beyond all recognition. Chill out a bit. Relaxing is something you should be able to enjoy more as the years tick past. So learn how to relax in your old age, because stress is a killer. There's no easy way of saying that. Whilst we need some stress in our lives, the level shouldn't be so high it sends your blood pressure through the roof or pushes you to explode with rage at the slightest provocation. Grumpy Old Men might have been a comedy film, but that doesn't mean its title was wrong. And there are various ways to help you relax. They're pretty much the same whether you're a youngster or someone who's older than they ever expected to be, or any age in between. Meditation, it's simple, and most types of meditation don't involve much more than sitting down and being at peace with the world. Preferably without unintentionally falling asleep, but that happens and it's okay. Swimming or walking or another fairly gentle form of aerobic exercise can be an easy way of relaxing and cutting stress. And if you've got a few like-minded friends, you could maybe take up something like golf that gives you an excuse for a long walk. Always assume you don't go down the route of buying a golf cart rather than walking. Turn off the news, because news is almost always negative and that doesn't help you to relax. Worrying about the problems being experienced by people you've never met in parts of the globe you've never visited just isn't productive use of your old age. Because let's face it, no one's ever listened to your opinion about what's happening in the news, and they're not going to start now just because you're a senior citizen or silver-haired, if you want to use one of those trendy modern terms instead. Play with the grandchildren. Depending on how old your grandchildren are, they may or may not be happy to do this. There's an age range where they're grateful for the attention, and then there's an age range where you're just far too geriatric and it's not cool for them to be even in the same house as you, let alone spend any time with you. But if you've got some younger kids that you can interact with, that can be a good way to chill out, even if you do get compared to Grandpa Pig every now and then. Start a new hobby. It's rarely too late to start a hobby, and okay, downhill mountain biking might be a bit too much, but even then there are different difficulty levels for the trails, and since the oldest skydiver in the world managed it at age 101, there's a chance for you yet. And just because the candles on your cake are starting to need their own fire truck on standby doesn't mean you have to stress about it. Find a way that helps you to chill, relax, and actually enjoy your senior years. It's different for different people, but everyone has something that helps them to de-stress at least once in a while. And just remember, you're not as young as you used to be, so those nights out on the town drinking until the early hours may not be quite such a good idea. Next up, adjust your attitude. Your outlook on life can have a major effect on things, and it's not just some new age law of attraction BS, even though I personally don't think it's BS. You'll know from the people that you've met over the years that some are walking around with their own personal thunderstorms stalking them, and they see the glass half empty viewpoint on absolutely everything. They'd even deny that glass was actually totally full, maybe even overflowing. They're the miserable ones who are doomed to keep in their own company and hate every minute of it. No one else can stand them, and their ex-friends, because they are ex-friends, are constantly looking for an excuse to avoid them, crossing the street literally or metaphorically. Then there are people you'd go out of your way to meet up with. Any excuse will do. They're just nice, friendly people to be with, and they always lift the room when they get there, sometimes with expectation levels even before they get there. Now, if your attitude has been subpar for as long as you can remember, it could be a tall order now that you're getting along in years, and that saying about old dogs and new tricks holds true to an extent. But it's not impossible to change your attitude for the better, and the weird thing is that reflects on other people, which turns into a virtuous circle. Start with a smile, even if it's forced. Smiling's infectious. And if you smile when in a shop, fumbling for your change, or muttering about how much cheaper things were when you were a lad or lass, even a knowing smile so the other person knows you know what you're doing, even if you can't really help it, that can make the world a difference. Look on the bright side more often. Okay, it wouldn't be easy if you're something like the Monty Python sketch, but hopefully you've got some things to be cheerful about. Concentrate on those more often, consciously at first, then gradually they'll become more of a part of who you are again. Curb your temper, and yeah, we all seem to lose our temper more often as the years pass by. Whether it's electronic gadgets that are pensioner proof, even if your 2-year-old grandchild has no problem running permanent clips from YouTube, or if it's things like keys that have a habit of not staying where you've certainly left them, or anything else that conspires against you. You could blame it on old age, but don't take out your frustrations on the people around you. Instead, do your best to get them to sympathise with you and help you out of your predicament. Travel in your old age. If you're still at the age where you can take trips without having a detailed map of every possible toilet break, take some trips. Go to all those places you always wanted to visit and do it while you still can. There are plenty of hotels that have lifts or ground floor rooms or even rooms with a disabled facility, so that's not a valid excuse. Getting to them's doable. If you're still able to drive safely, that's an obvious option. If not, there are other ways of doing things. Travel companies have realised that the senior market can and will spend money, which means there are now the older generation's versions of 18 to 30 holidays available. Although whether you want to spend your vacation cooped up with a bunch of other oldies is another matter. I'm not sure how other old people always seem to be just much older than their years, but it's the case far too often to be a coincidence. And unless the holiday package is deliberately aimed at youngsters, maybe spending spring break in Cancun, that kind of thing, then there's a good chance you can book a place. Just make sure your insurance covers you, because like it or not, older people like us aren't quite as resilient as those with less years on the clock. The plus point with being a senior in some tours is that the tour guide, who, much like policemen, gets younger every time you look, may turn to you for extra facts or information. And if that happens, revel in the intention, but don't overstay your welcome by rambling on with a 30-minute answer when they were really only looking for a 30-second soundbite. Travelling's also a good excuse to relax. You're never too old to chill on a beach, and there aren't usually too many mirrors to remind you that you're not quite as beach ready as you were a few years ago. Or you might prefer to take in the scenery. Coach tours can work okay for that, as long as the schedule isn't too long and the company that you're keeping is friendly enough. Thing is, you need to do it while you can. There are never any guarantees about the availability of tomorrow, and by definition the number of potential tomorrows is an ever decreasing value. So go on, treat yourself. Do those things on your bucket list while you still can, and if the kids will moan about getting less inheritance, either shrug it off or let them tag along as well, but don't use that as an excuse not to enjoy yourself as you get older. Look after your health as you get older as well. I know you probably rattle from the number of pills you're taking because your doctor thought they were a good idea, but that doesn't mean you can ignore your health just because you're getting older. Obviously don't put yourself in danger, which might mean the more strenuous forms of exercise are no-go, but there are always things you can do. If you find it difficult to move very far, then the Feldenkrais method, I think I pronounced that right, is well worth investigating, but hopefully you can still get around reasonably well, in which case make sure you keep in practice, keep a journal if need be, but don't let your age stop you from doing those little things that combined have a large effect. Some of your habits may usefully need looking at. If you still smoke, think about whether you should cut down or stop altogether. And yeah, I know there are stories of chain smokers who live for what seemed like forever, but that doesn't mean you will. You're old enough to know that smoking is no longer socially acceptable and that near enough all the studies show it's harmful. If you need to cut down, talk to a teenager about vaping, don't know what you mean, and see whether that will help you cut back on your nicotine addiction. Likewise, drinking is something to keep on top of. Sure, the hard drinking actors of yesteryear got away with it, but raising your glass too often isn't necessarily a good idea. Doesn't mean you don't have to give up alcohol altogether, but moderating your drinking is actually a good idea to help your kidneys and the rest of your body cope better. And think about your food. I don't mean the fatty diets here. There's a fair amount of research that says unhealthy foods like a fried breakfast or red meat are actually okay for us. Steer clear of anything your grandparents wouldn't have used and wouldn't have recognised, and you'll have a pretty good diet that's enjoyable to eat. Don't be so proud that you don't call your doctor if necessary. It's easy to think that calling your doctor is a waste of time. It's only a minor problem, obviously. And with luck, that's the case, but this is one of those better safe than sorry instances where getting that minor irritation checked out could well stop it turning into a major irritation. And sure, there may be some charges involved, but if it means you're not going to be bedridden, it's worth it. Same goes for getting your teeth checked regularly. I've never met anyone who enjoyed sitting in the dentist chair, but that doesn't mean that getting your teeth checked is something you can forget about as you get older. Implants are expensive, but they don't wobble anywhere near as much as dentures. And generally look after yourself. The bionic man, yeah, they're still a while away, even though you can get hips and knees and other bits of you replaced. But if you're able to keep every part of your body you were born with, then that's a much better option than going under the knife to have bits replaced. Keep your mind alive. Your mind is probably the most important part of you, and keeping it alive as we get older can be a challenge. Forgetfulness creeps in, or maybe we just notice it when we don't remember things more often. Not totally sure about that. If you're retired, it can be easy to slip into a routine that doesn't challenge your mind as much as your old job did. And that comes back to having a hobby, something to keep you occupied rather than being bored. Hobby can be near enough anything. There are books on lots of things, and despite the title, the Dummies series is actually almost always quite well written. Or you could turn to YouTube for instruction videos on virtually everything short of open heart surgery, and that probably shouldn't be your career choice at this stage of life anyway. Sorry about that. You can also play mind-challenging games online. Gone are the days when it was just the option of solitaire. Now there are more games than you've ever heard of. Often playable for free if you can put up the adverts that go everywhere. And they don't just have to be you versus the computer, although there are plenty of sites that will happily generate as many crosswords or word searches or Sudoku as you're ever likely to complete in this lifetime. Multiplayer games aren't just for youths to kill each other in a virtual environment. You can play games like Scrabble, Monopoly, card games, and that's not just poker, but there are games like Canasta or Bridge, and lots of other games you may or may not have heard of with people you probably never meet in real life, but they'll still play. Books are everywhere. You can borrow them for your Kindle if you're prepared to pay for Amazon's Prime service, or just go for the free ones, whatever. Movies and documentaries abound. They're probably on one of those TV channels you claim never has anything worth watching, or you can watch them online or with that Amazon or Netflix subscription. There's absolutely no excuse for letting your mind get bored now that you're getting older. And actually, you can still let your mind be the place where you escape to and don't have to grow old as gracefully as other people expect you to in the comfort of your own mind. It's your imagination, and you've got more memories and experiences to draw on, so give it some scope and let your imagination work its magic. And the other suggestion I'm going to make is using hypnosis to help you accept getting older, because changing how our minds work isn't always as easy as it should be. And hypnosis is a simple and highly effective way to change how your mind thinks without having to do much towards the process. You've always been able to be hypnotised if you've ever daydreamed or gone on a journey where you can't remember much apart from setting out on your trip and arriving at your destination. You've hypnotised yourself. The only difference with using a hypnosis download is it's more intentional. The hypnosis tracks will work with your mind even if it's in a stubborn mood. to change your outlook on life and help you grow old gracefully and have some fun into the bargain if your mind's in a good mood. You don't have to book a visit to your local hypnotist either. Just like everything else nowadays, it's readily available online in exchange for a very small amount of money. The handful of dollars it costs will be more than repaid by the improvements in the way you handle this inevitable getting old thing, even if you're skeptical about it, and even if you're more forgetful than you used to be. Regardless of how long or short your attention span and patience are, it's just plain easy. All you've got to do is click the link below this video and follow the simple instructions, and you'll be hypnotizing yourself before you know what's happening. Thanks for watching.